Well, welcome back to Managerial Accounting. And as promised, I've done a couple of things for you this morning as a follow up to last night's class. First of all, I corrected the deck that's posted here. So you see on the screen, it's posted in where I have the chapter slides. This is the exam number 3 review deck that for some reason didn't get loaded. So you'll see what I've done here is I've gone to each of the chapters and I have put for each of the chapters what the objectives were. And we were able to review all of this stuff in class yesterday, so I'm not going to review it again, but you'll see the objectives for chapter 9. Those things, when you see them, should ring a bell. And remember the scope of the multiple choice questions, it could relate to any one of those objectives. So there's the objectives for chapter 9. Also, I recommended to you, you create your own little reference, I don't call it cheat sheet, little reference guide. You know that you're going to be having to calculate variances. So these are all the different variances that you have. So you've got variances for materials, you've got variances for labor, you've got variances for factory overhead. And then each of those variances can be cut into 2 separate subvariances. So I would recommend you print this thing out and you actually above each one of these things here. So put in the little formula for direct materials price variance, for direct materials quantity variance, and so forth, and have that with you as a resource that you can bring in to the exam. So if you have variance questions, you could very simply apply the formulas that you have here. Okay, so print this out, write in your formulas, bring it with you to class on Thursday. And then here's the objectives for chapter 10. Again, we reviewed all of these in class. There's the objectives for chapter 11. And there's the objectives for chapter 12. So you've all got that in one little slide deck right there in front of you. And look in the chapter slides section of Brightspace, and you will find the slides for exam number 3 review. All right. So I promised to give you that, to share with you that. And I also promised to review the one set of questions we didn't get to in class. Remember, at the back of each chapter, there are multiple choice questions. And we got through ones from 9, we got through 10, we got through 11. We didn't get through 12. So let's talk about those now. Methods of evaluating capital proposals that ignore present value. So when you evaluate investment proposals, you've got the payback period, you have the average rate of return, you've got the net present value, and you've got the internal rate of return. The ones that ignore present value, average rate of return and payback method do not consider the present value. So those would be, so the correct answer there would be C, both A and B. The ones that do consider the present value would be the internal rate of return, which we'll see a little bit later on, and the net present value method. Number 2, so the correct answer there is C. So the answer is both A and B. Number 2, management is considering an investment of $100,000 project with a 5-year useful life and no residual value, right? So it cost us $100,000 and it's got no residual value. So at the end of the useful life, it's going to have a 0 value. So if you want to get the average investment over the period, it's 100,000 plus 0 divided by 2, because that's going to be the average value. And then they tell us the total in from the project is expected to be 60,000, but that's the total income of the project over 5 years. So to get the correct answer for that, you have to set up a fraction, and the fraction is not 60,000 in the numerator, which is the amount of the 60,000, but that's going to be total return 60,000. That's going to be over 5 years. So in the numerator, you got to take 60,000 and divide by 5. And in the denominator, the $100,000 project plus 0 divided by 2. So if you look at that here, here's how you get the correct answer at 24%. There's the income, and it's over 5 years, so $60,000 divided by 5. And the investment is $100,000 to begin with. It's got 0 value at the end. Divide that by 2, so you come up with a rate of 24%. Whenever you've got these computational multiple choice questions, do the computation first. So if we do the computation first, we see it's 24%, and then go looking for your right answer. The right answer there is B, 24%. C, the expected period of time that will elapse between the date of a capital investment and the recovery of the amount of cash invested. So is that average rate of return? And no, there's a different formula for that. We just did that. Is it net present value? No, because we didn't consider the present value of the future cash flows. Is the internal rate of return period? No, because that is, we would take a look at the actual return earned. So both C and D are involved in the present value. So the correct answer here is C. Expected period of time elapsed between the date of the capital investment and the complete recovery of the amount of cash invested. That's the definition of the cash payback method. And if you don't believe me, there is a little essay that explains why that is so. Not as succinctly as I would say it, but that's so the correct answer there is B. Okay, number 4. A project will cost $120,000. It's estimated to generate cash flows of $25,000 a year for 8 years. What is the present value of the project, assuming an 11% required rate of return? Use the present value tables. Okay. So the net present value, you have to figure out the present value of the future cash inflows. And they told us that it's $25,000 for 8 years. So if you got payments of the same amount for 8 years, that's the present value of an annuity. So we're going to use Appendix A to get the present value of 25,000 that's going to be received over 8 years. It's going to be received over 8 years, discounted at the rate of 11%. So you get the present value of the future cash flows. From that, you've got to subtract the cost of the project, which they told us was 120,000, and that'll give us the net present value, which could be either positive or negative. So what you have to do here is to get the present value of the future cash flows. It's 25,000 a year, 8 years at 11%. So we have to go to the appendix, and hopefully we haven't had our appendix removed. And when we go to the appendix, it's the present value, not of a lump sum. It is the present value of an annuity. So there's the present value of a lump sum. There's more present value of a lump sum. Notice the numbers are all less than 1. And then here we have the present value of an annuity. So they said the present value of an annuity, and they said assume an interest rate of 11%, and it was 11% for 8 years. So here we go. We find 8 years, and we find 11%, and 8 years times so 8 years, yeah. No, it's 8 years, 11%. So 8 years and 11%. 8 years, 11%. And you see, if you take 8 years across and you go 11%, it's 5.146124. So it's this little number right there. All right, so go back. Let's get my little head out of the way here. Okay, so 8 years, 11%. There's my multiple. Let's get rid of that. Okay. So there's the 25,000. There's the multiple. So the present value of the future cash inflows is 128,653. Cost of the project is 120. So you get a net present value of 8,653. So that is B. And the last one has to do with the internal rate of return. So the internal rate of return, we don't know what the rate of return is, but we know if we compare the cost of the project to the future cash flows, set up a ratio, what we can do is we can, if it's 10 years, we can go to the annuity table, and we can find the interest rate that comes closest to that amount. So the project costs $226,000. And the future cash flows are $40,000. It's $40,000 for 10 years. Right, so what we do here is there's the cost of the project, $226,000. There is the present value, and that's a series of payments. And it's a series of payments over 10 years. And we have to solve for the interest rate. So the number that we get is 5.65022. We go to Appendix A. So this is, in a sense, your present value multiple here. The 5.65022 is our present value multiple. we go to Appendix A. We find an interest rate that corresponds to that. And we go 10 years. 10 years, and we got to go to the present value of an annuity. So we got to work our way through here. All right, so there's the present value of annuity. And notice if we go 10 years and we go across the first interest rate, no, the number is, we're looking for 5.605. So it's clearly larger than 6%. 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. And there it is. So that corresponds to 10 years and 12%. There's your 5.65025. Okay. All right, so that's it. So also, in addition to the multiple choice, again, as I mentioned to Ramona last night, the homework problems are the exam take-home part of the exams are very similar to these problems that we did in class. And know that the problems we did in class also have the solutions as well. So when you go back, you've got your notes on these things, but any one of these things, if you're struggling with, how to do a computation and a take-home, go back and find a similar homework problem, and just you could reference and follow the same logic, and you got your answer right here. Okay. All right. So I hope you found that little review useful. Again, what I would also suggest you do, which is not in my slides, is go ahead and do the little diagnostic things that you got in each chapter. So if I go back, if I can find my way back to Brightspace here. There we go. Okay, so I want to go back to Brightspace. And oops, Brightspace. There we go. And in Brightspace, in the contents, I go to the Cengage material. I go managerial accounting. Wheels on the bus go round and round, for those of you who have kids, or those of you who may remember when you were a kid, maybe your parents sang you that song. Go to study tools. Go to study tools here. And notice here, if I want to just focus in on chapter 12. So I go to chapter 12, capital investment analysis. I click on. And I'll take an assessment. I'll go to improve my score. Okay. And these are the objectives for the chapter. So you get a review of these. And then you get started. And you have a whole series of multiple choice questions. So you answer all the questions. And you see for this chapter, they've got 15 questions. I'm only going to give you 8 for each chapter, but they give you 15. And what it'll do is you go through and complete it as if you were taking an exam. It will give you your score, and it'll tell you of these objectives, which ones you're strong with, which ones you're weak, and if you're weak, it gives you specific recommendations. Okay. So you just go on, and there's all your little practice multiple choice questions. So there are 12 of them. Actually, no, there's 15 of them. Yeah, there we go. So again, more practice with the multiple choice. Okay, guys, I hope you found that review useful, and I will see you on Thursday. Be well and have a great day.